appreciation for the sacrifices made by our veterans. Today is a day to remember, to honor, and to express our gratitude. It's a day to recognize that the freedoms we enjoy are not free. They come at a cost paid by the brave men and women who have donned the uniform of our country. I encourage each and every one of you to actively engage in today's program, to listen and learn, and most importantly, to reflect on the profound impact our veterans have had on our lives and the life of our nation. Let us approach this day with reverence, gratitude, and a renewed commitment to supporting and respecting those who have served. Thank you for joining us in this important commemoration, and let us continue to honor our veterans, not just today, but every day. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to stand, remove your hats. I'd like to invite students Miley Bruce and Peyton Rocco to present our colors. At this time, I'd like to invite student Wyatt Peterson up to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd ask that everyone remain standing when he is done, as the band will lead us in our national anthem.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, at this time, our choir, led by Miss Bingham, is going to lead us in the song, Thank You, Soldiers. Miss Bingham. Miss Bingham and the choir. That was outstanding. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker this morning. Our guest enlisted in the Army and the Minnesota Army National Guard last century and served as an artillery fire direction control section leader, winter operations skill instructor, and color guard member serving at numerous events and funerals. Later, he re-enlisted in the Minnesota Air National Guard's 133rd Airlift Wing's 133rd Medical Dental Squadron as a biomedical equipment technician and chemical, explosive, radiological force protection team member, supporting numerous regional and national events. He deployed with the 442nd Expeditionary Medical Support, or EMED Squadron, to Sather Air Base, Baghdad, Iraq in 2007-2008. During this deployment, the 442 EMEDs supported Operation Iraqi Freedom Coalition forces and directly supported a brother Iraqi Air Force unit establishing a similar mission for their Iraqi armed forces. During his last deployment to, of all places, Camp Ripley, he served as First Sergeant coordinating Army and Air Force National Guard members training in weapons of mass destruction response. Please help me welcome our very own Mr. H.
Thank you, Mr. Swenson, for inviting me to share what I feel the significance of Veterans Day is. Some of you may not realize that before I came to the middle school, I had a different title. Before I was Mr. H, I was Sergeant H. That title provided me with a perspective on the world I couldn't imagine when I was your age. And because of it, let me tell you a short story on what I feel Veterans Day means. If you pay close attention to the next couple of minutes, perhaps your social studies teacher may give you extra credit for what I'm about to tell you. The 11th minute of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. What we call Veterans Day today started when the Allied powers and the Central Powers signed a peace treaty in 1918 on the 11th minute of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Armistice Day, as was known then, a little over 100 years ago, marked the end of the Great War as it was known. Today we call it World War I. Another title given to that war by politicians was the War to End All Wars. They thought we could reason our way out of future wars and started the League of Nations, a precursor to our United Nations today. Those who lived through the War to End All Wars said that because of the scale of destruction, the number of dead, those who lived through it couldn't believe we would ever be part of war again. Unfortunately, those who thought that never studied history, because some say ancient Greek philosopher Plato said, only the dead have seen the end of war. If you ask those who study history, they would say one could give a very brief description of history of the world as follows: war with brief periods of peace. Thomas Jefferson stated that peace is the brief, glorious moment in history when everybody stands around reloading. There is a confusing statement from ancient Rome we recited multiple times a day in basic training. Sic vix pacem parabellum. If you wish for peace, prepare for war. There are many, many more quotes throughout history, too numerous to mention here. Until such time as all of mankind can live in peace, we need those willing to serve our military and earn the title of veteran. There are a number of ways to describe a veteran, but today I want to talk about one: sacrifice. You hear the phrase, all gave some, and some gave all. This is a brief explanation of one definition of what it means to be a veteran. But that glosses over the effort and change needed to get there. Here's a brief story to help illustrate this. I grew up in the country, and my family attended a small country church. There were a large number of men in the congregation who had either a missing finger or fingers. One had a missing arm and one had a missing leg. And almost everyone had hearing aids. The old-fashioned kind with the small box that was in your pocket and the wires running up to your ear. As I got older, I realized a few of these injuries were due to the dreaded corn picker and other farm machinery, and the hearing aids were sitting on an old tractor for hours, for years, without a cab or hearing protection. Being around very loud noises back then almost guaranteed hearing loss. When I became old enough to have conversations with these men, I found out that a couple of these injuries came from service to our country in the various conflicts and in various military branches, mainly the Army. My family has many service members, with most enlisting in the Army. I had two great uncles serve in World War II and several other family members in Korea and Vietnam. My great uncles, both in the Army, were in the Army before Pearl Harbor and immediately were sent to various locations when we declared war. They didn't know it at the time, but they weren't to see home for many years. One of them was gone for 6 years, being sent to North Africa, Italy, England, France, Holland, and finally, Germany. He rose to the rank of Chief Warrant Officer 5, the highest rank in the Army Warrant Officer Corps, and his uniform and some of his memorabilia are at the Camp Ripley Military Museum. As a kid, I had no idea the sacrifice given by these men, since all I heard were stories of the exciting times and the funny things that happened. I had no concept of the effort and extreme hardship this service entailed. I was just a kid hearing war stories and thinking of all the cool things they got to do. Fast forward to me a few years older than you are now. I enlisted last century out of a sense of duty and wanting to have stories of my own someday. But truth be told, it was the enticement of the means to pay for college that really pushed me towards the military. So I arrived at basic training, a simple farm boy from the prairies of Minnesota, finding a melting pot of kids from all over the United States and our territories. Some spoke English, I think, from the backwoods of Kentucky, the bayous of Louisiana, and Puerto Rico. Some from totally different cultures, like Mormons from Utah, Guamanians from Guam, and kids from inner city Chicago. We were thrown together to live extremely close for 12 weeks. Once we put on the uniform and our heads were shaved, it didn't matter where or what we came from. We were all the same according to our drill instructors, especially our senior drill instructors. The senior drill instructor is the person who leads all drill instructors and is in charge over all recruit training. You have seen the movies where communication between drill instructors and recruits is fairly simple. Simple meaning only one way, extremely loud, and very, very to the point. But my senior drill instructor, Davis, was different. So let me paint a picture. Senior drill instructor Davis was 6 foot 2 inches tall, wire-rimmed glasses, and massive. Think a black Arnold Schwarzenegger, and if you don't know who he is, The Rock, whose uniform was straining to contain his muscles. In fact, I believe the more push-ups we did, his arms got bigger. His uniform showed airborne jump wings and air assault wings. He was the kind of person that we joked, but only when we couldn't hear us. If it flew, he would jump out of it. Under the campaign hat, the brown wide brim hat that marks all drill instructors, was a kind and gentle face that was very friendly and comforting. If you ever run into him and talk to him, please don't tell him I said that. And a voice like an angel. Definitely don't tell him I said that. He instructed us with a calm, confident, and very scholarly manner and rarely raised his voice. But when he did, it was something really unexpected. "Hey, ice cream boy," he would say in a kind of high-pitched southern drawl. In that moment, if you were lucky to see anything, you saw a very large person move like a ninja, a blur. He would be in your face and giving very poignant and intense instructions. Gone was the voice of an angel, and what came out was a cross between a foghorn and a siren, because everyone around you heard the instructions loud and clear. And to make matters even more memorable, because senior drill instructor provided corrected instructions to a recruit, that recruit's drill instructor reinforced the training for the remainder of the day. The training cycle for however long it took to get the message across. Now, as I look back at it, it was a very positive experience. Please tell senior drill instructor Davis that I hope this makes up for the Angel Book experience. Now you know what you were thinking. Ice cream boy, what's that all about? Senior drill instructor Davis explained to us many weeks later that when he sees recruits walking like a civilian, acting like a civilian, talking like a civilian, like they're going to get ice cream back home, and like it's no big deal, he would call them that. But many weeks later, after a lot of sweat, dirt, mud, and cleaning everything, and I mean everything, and a little sleep, those that remained were not walking, acting, or talking like those going to get an ice cream, but walking, acting, and talking with a purpose, and more importantly, as a cohesive group. He had done his job, turning a bunch of ragtag individuals from all walks of life, from different creeds and cultures, into soldiers, with a common understanding of what it means to be a soldier. He and the other drill instructors transformed us into into someone not there just for college money, but an asset to the country ready to do what was required of us. From someone who couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time to soldiers who could march in unison, sing cadence in unison, follow commands in unison, all while working together in unison. In short, we work together in unison, or the better way of saying it, a team. I graduated basic training, was grateful, happy, and relieved. But the thing about the military is that you're never done training. Even though I graduated from basic training, I went to advanced training for instruction on what I signed up to do. What my job was, this all was before I ever got to be in the Army. My job was to be a computer. A real, honest-to-goodness computer, just like the ones you use in math class, only you call it a calculator. My job is to take information and actually compute a solution using mathematical tables, a slide rule. Ask your teachers what a slide rule is. Geometry, along with science of weather, the wearing of metal, and even to take into consideration the rotation of the Earth. Rotation of the Earth, you ask? Yes. My job was to calculate where a 94-pound projectile would land from where we were to a point upwards of 20 miles away. It took as much as 10 minutes for that round to reach the target. In that time, the Earth rotated and the target moved. That's why we factored in the rotation of the Earth. My group of soldiers was called the Fire Directional Control. Other soldiers would contact us on the radio with a problem that my fellow soldiers and I would use math and science to provide a solution to that problem by sending a 94-pound projectile to help the soldiers radio it. Our final test was to go into the field and perform our tasks with real information and real projectiles. Think of a math final when you had no idea what the problem was until you got the test. The instructors would give you a problem and you solved it using all you learned. Could we do what was needed to be done and get the right answer to put the projectile where it needed to go? If it came close to the target, you passed. Those that passed the final test graduated. It was not only those of us in fire directional patrol being tested, but the forward observers who called us on the radio with the target, the cannon crew members who operated and fired the cannon based on the information my section gave them, and all the senior training sergeants who oversaw us every step of the way. During this test, another Army artillery unit was firing over our heads into the target area in front of us. This is a normal occurrence and happened all day without issue. Until that unit made a mistake and dropped 2 projectiles out of 3 right on us. All I heard was the buzz of shrapnel and then laying in the dirt looking up at holes in the tent of the roof we were under. It was over before I really knew what happened. It was a miracle that a great number of us in my section were not wounded or worse. A few of the cannon crew members were wounded but all survived. Our training that day was tested and we passed. The unit behind us made a critical mistake and almost cost the lives of 25 soldiers. It was a stark reality check that again reinforced the possible cost of being in the military, the possible sacrifice necessary. Again, after graduation, I was grateful, happy, and relieved, but also excited now because I was finally able to be in the Army. When I arrived at my first duty station, I immediately went into, you guessed it, another training status. You may ask yourselves, why all the training? Why was I not done with training? I asked myself the same question. It's because basic training is called that for a reason. It's basic. The foundation or the very beginning. Advanced training trains you to do your job in a classroom. Once I arrived at my actual unit, my senior sergeants took me and trained me in how to do the real job in the real world, not just in a classroom and not just on paper. Where the person who calls on the radio needs your support quickly, and more importantly, accurately, so that he and his friends stay alive. Our final test experience made it easy to understand and to buy into safety and security at all times. My senior training sergeants were Vietnam veterans, and I'm sad to say that Vietnam veterans were not treated very well back in those days. Their service was mocked, made fun of, and disrespected in pop culture and in day-to-day life. Those in uniform were harassed, and even worse, when they were out in public. Those Vietnam service members who stayed in the military after Vietnam were still down into no-nonsense, hardened, and very intense soldiers. They trained me not only like my life depended on it, but like their life depended on it, because it did. They were going to make sure that I didn't let them down. The reason they trained me this way was obvious: to not get hurt or worse. But what they really showed me is that being in the military is not about fighting against the enemy or someone you don't like. It's fighting for what you love. The service member next to you, the service member who calls on the radio for help, the family you left behind, and the millions of people you would never meet that don't have to sacrifice, endure the pain, misery, and heartache of war. We did things never before seen as possible in a time frame that was impossible with people we never knew were capable. We overcame our doubts and fears to achieve what we in the military know now as Tuesday. ordinary, everyday Tuesday. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. I'm reminded of the men in church, my neighbors who flew B-24s and B-17s in World War II, my grandfather's cousin in Norway who was in the Norwegian army and lived through the German occupation. Out of uniform, they did not seem heroic. They were my neighbors, who I knew as friends of my grandfather, who farmed, raised a family, and were part of a community. But they stepped up and did what needed to be done. They sacrificed for us. They knew that an ordinary Tuesday wasn't so ordinary. Little did I know as a kid what they went through and saw. After I came back from training in the Army, they started telling me some of the other stories. The not so funny and nice stories they didn't tell their families or neighbors. Some stories you can't tell to just anybody. You only tell those stories to those who understand the horror and sacrifice the stories about, and to honor those who didn't come home. When I came back from Iraq, I never thought anyone would be there to meet me. When I landed in Baltimore, there were hundreds of people there to greet those of us returning from overseas. Just because we were coming home, they came out to greet us. They were not there because they had a later flight or knew someone arriving at the airport. They were there just for us. I was overwhelmed. It was a tough transition from being in a combat zone back in the United States in less than 24 hours. Those who came out to support us that day made a huge impression on us, and I was grateful to have known that support. I often thought about my senior sergeants coming home from Vietnam and what they went through. I am truly grateful for that support, and I wish they know of our support now. The reason we are here today is to honor those who served, what we now call Veterans Day. I am speaking to you not because I was a hero. I didn't serve as a Navy SEAL, Army Green Beret, or Ranger, an Air Force Pararescueman or Combat Controller, a Marine Raider or Force Recon. I was an ordinary soldier who sacrificed and did my duty, lived to tell about it, and now have a few funny and strange stories to tell. And some stories I do not tell. Like all those service members who went before me, I take my place in the community and hope I can continue to serve in whatever capacity to help the community and the country. And I am thankful that I can wish you all an ordinary Thursday today. For me and those who served and continue to serve in our nation's armed forces, thank you for your support. I hope that every Veterans Day going forward, and every time we see a service member, we all remember those who served and sacrificed on our behalf. All gave some, and some gave all. I wish to thank the Little Falls School District for having this important event. Not every student today or any time this week has something to take out of the middle of their day to remember and to understand, to help understand. Thank you all for listening and allowing me to share my thoughts. God bless you, our veterans, and those currently in harm's way, and God bless America. Thank you.
Mr. H, and thank you for your service and inspiration to our school community. At this time, I'd just like to recognize some important people that are with us this morning. If you are a veteran community member, veteran of our staff. Would you please stand? If you are a veteran, please stand. Thank you all for your service. I also want to recognize an important group of people in our student body, in our school community, that is impacted by service. And for those of you who might have a parent or a family member in active service, will you please stand at this time? Take a look around. Stay standing, please. Stay standing. Stay standing. You know, we are honoring veterans today, and one of the things that's really important is for us to recognize those who are impacted by, who have family members who are actively serving right now, and who bear the burden of that service. And so I just want to thank you all for what I'm sure is an additional burden that you carry at home because you have extra responsibilities, because a family member is not present like they normally would be. So thank you all for the role that you play as well. At this time, our band is going to perform the song Let Freedom Ring, directed by Mr. Pennell.
Thank you very much. We're going to close our ceremony today with the playing of taps. Our veterans make very many sacrifices. One of the ones that we tend to maybe not remember is that when they're away serving, they adopt a new family. They're working with people every day that are looking out for them and that they're looking out for. And sometimes those family members that they're serving with don't come home. So we'd like to honor that additional sacrifice today. We're going to have the playing of taps performed by Emily Overton and Malin Youngberg. You're going to hear taps in the gymnasium, and then we're going to have an echo after that. Once you hear taps twice, you're going to remain silent, and Mr. Swenson will let you know when that moment of silence is done. Please do not clap. I know you want to, but please do not clap after taps.
Thank you, everyone. Before we conclude our program, we are going to retire the colors this morning. So as Pete Morocco and Riley Bruce come down, I want to take the opportunity to thank everyone for your participation this morning. To our community members who came out, thank you so much for coming to the middle school. I'm sure there are other programs that you could have gone to as well. I hope that this enriched you and that you feel honored by our program this morning. To our students, thank you for demonstrating flyer pride as well. I'd like to invite you all to stand as our colors are retired, and then we will dismiss once the colors have been retired. Thank you, everyone. To our community members, you are welcome to exit at this point if you would like to, and we are going to begin dismissal. Students, just hang tight for a second, and we'll dismiss to first period in a second. We want to let our guests leave first.